coming up in this video, I'll show you how I paint Jeor Mormont from the Night's Watch starter for a Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game from CMON. Hey everybody, welcome back to MiniJunkie. My name's Jarrett. You could probably tell off the top of the intro that I can't say that guy's name properly. I think it's okay, Jeor Mormont. He is the leader I chose, the character leader I chose. Actually, he's the lord of my army, I suppose, to paint first out of the starter set. And because he's a character with a different design and some more detail and stuff like that, and you want him to kind of stand out, look nice, I do spend more time on this guy. And I'll show you, in comparison to how we did the blacks on the original Night Watch units and the Sworn Brothers, etc., where it was a lot of dry brushing. Here we're going to layer in the black highlights a little more carefully, be a little more neat with it, and then spend again more time on the head area and the hair and whatnot, because that becomes again the focal point. And then try and find a way to make the black raven on his arm stand out against all the other black that's going on, because this guy, if you look at a photo of him from the show, and the show really is my frame of reference for painting all the models in this game, he's very much wearing black. Everything is black. I went with brown boots, I think, but generally speaking, there's not a lot of room to make this guy look interesting, I would say. But let's see how I go about trying to do so. Let's get to the painting. Here's a look at how Jeor will look when we're finished. It should be noted again that these Song of Ice and Fire miniatures are a type of like a PVC style plastic miniature, so they won't hold up detail as well as like a metal or resin, and there's definitely some imperfections, but still really nice models for the cost. I also want to point out that Redgrass Games sent me a couple of their new Kolinsky Sable brushes to test out and to review. There's a size 2 and a size 00, and I'm going to be using them while I'm painting this guy, because in order to give an opinion on them, I need to use them on a couple models first. Notice also I primed his head white and the rest black. You don't really have to do that, but his hair is going to end up white anyway, and I want his skin to be quite fair, so that's what I decided to work with. We're going to start with coal black from P3, and we're going to use this to dry brush the fur mantle he's wearing. You almost always want to do dry brushing first before you do some of the more careful layering and highlighting work, because dry brushing is a bit of a messy process. If you don't know how to dry brush, there's about 1 million tutorials on YouTube to check out. Then I dry brushed a little bit lighter and a little bit higher up on the tops of the shoulders, etc. with Thunderhawk Blue. Now I'm going to hand paint some layers in with Incubi Darkness, and what I'm doing here is very similar to the way I painted the unit of Sworn Brothers, in that I'm painting black all over the miniature, but using different ways of highlighting it to create some variety. The armor to start off, it's like those sort of scale plates, I worked that in with some Boiler Black from P3. Eventually I'm going to come in and brighten that up a little bit though. I also used that to paint the sword hilts. I still feel that the Night's Watch would be fairly austere. I think I used that right, and would not use much gold at all. Now with the cape or cloak, I'm going to work up from black by adding Stegadon Stale Green. Here you can see I've added probably 2-3 drops to a pool of black, because in the end I want Stegadon Stale Green to be almost the brightest highlight. I think I'll take it a little brighter, almost like for some edge highlighting. But I really like how Stegadon Stale Green highlights black. It's a really nice, rich looking highlight without taking away the blackness and turning it into gray or blue. So yeah, now I'm going right up to Stegadon Stale Green. But I'm adding a little bit of glaze medium. You can see here by Vallejo, it's probably 2 drops of it. You don't want to add too much, and then that's going to help create some nice feathering and some nice layering, so you won't have too stark of a transition to this brighter color, although I guess in the video it looks pretty stark. But it does help, the glaze medium does help you to blend and create smoother transitions between your highlights. I'm just kind of blowing it right now. If you don't already know, layering works in a way that you apply your brighter and brighter colors to the raised areas of any surface, and each step you try to cover less and less of that area and leave the previous step showing, so you get the transition from dark to light. I've done this in the past where I add a bone color to brighten up a base color for a highlight instead of using like a white or jumping to a very bright color, blue, for example. That's going to bring up the brightness of the Stegodon scale green subtly, enough to show, but not enough to be like, oh wow, that's like a super, big transition to this bright edge. And I am doing this as an edge highlight, so you can see how I'm edging the very sharpest folds of the cloak. And I am applying this right from the original pool we just created using that glaze medium, so the glaze medium is still part of the mix and is going to help it flow better as you do the edge highlights. Tried to stay away from gray as a black highlight because it can easily just turn into gray looking period. But I also am running out of options for ways to highlight the black, so I used Eschen Gray as a highlight on the gloves and sleeves. I think that was the only real area. So in keeping with running out of ways to highlight black on this guy and his raven, who are black, 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 I decided to use coal black to highlight the raven. I think I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to darken down the coal black of the fur to try and distinguish the two. The raven's tough. He's just not going to show up very well, to be honest, unless you paint him really bright highlights, which I didn't want to do. And then I come in with Thunderhawk Blue and just really try to hit just the tips of the feathers. The feathers, again, because of the type of plastic this is, it's not a lot of detail and crispness there, so you have to try to use your imagination and your careful eyesight to pick out where the feathers are and just hit them with a bit of a highlight with this color and not completely cover the previous step. So yeah, Nuln Oil, the non-gloss version, will darken down whatever you apply it over, and I'm using that to my advantage here because I did want to darken down the fur mantle, and that is going to have the side benefit of creating more definition in the fur as well. Now I want to paint some of the metallics a little brighter, try and create some contrast and visual interest in this guy, because originally I was going to go for like that dark armor plates, but I decided it's just, you need more contrast with this miniature to help him pop a little bit on the table. I'm using an old chainmail color from GW. You can use Runefang Steel, that would be about the equivalent, or anything that's like a not quite bright silver and not gunmetal. I use this a lot in my miniatures. And I'm painting pretty much everything that's metal on this guy, the various studs on his leather or material armor and the cuffs of his gloves, and then I'm doing a bit of a highlight on the armor plates as well. I'm also doing some of the little, I guess, throwing knives and things that are on his belt. Continuing to try not to make the gloves turn gray, I took Dawnstone and just very, very small highlights on the like the ridges of his knuckles and various sharper parts of the armor, like the edges of the cuffs, just to create a little bit more detail and try to continue to leave them black. In the Sworn Brothers unit video, I noticed that hull red creates kind of a nice rich brown color for leather. I decided to apply that here to not too many areas, just some of his belt area, again, just to create a little bit of variety. Probably this belt should be black, but I decided to use the hull red. Then I realized I had missed his, I don't know what you call it, the chain that goes between the, holds his fur mantle on. And it's kind of got like a bauble, I don't know a chain, I don't know how to describe this. But anyway, and again, the detail's a bit soft, so it was a little tough to pick out what was what. But I'm using that same chainmail Runefang Steel color to work that in here as well. Don't know if you notice, if you've been watching my videos, I'm actually finding a way to zoom in on some of these shots just using my editing software. Let me know if you notice and if you think it's working and if it still stays clear enough, etc. For the handles or hilts of the weapons, I used Doombull Brown and just painted that in. No magic here. Just be careful and do it neatly and you're done with that step. So now we're coming around to the hair and the face, and you'll notice that even though he kind of has white hair, it's not even gray, it's mostly almost white, but it has a lot of sepia tones in it, sort of tan undertones, beige, I don't know what else to call it, and then like a ruddy fair complexion. I'm going to be trying to achieve both of those things as I approach painting the head area. So with the hair having a solid white base coat, and you can either hand paint that in or it will have been through your primer, I'm going to do an all over wash of sepia shade from GW, and that's because I'm creating those beige sepia undertones of the hair, and then I'm going to come in with highlighting and you know, turn it mostly white again, but still leave some of that undertone there to give the effect that you see in the photo I posted. Boots are going to be dark brown. We paint them Rhinox hide and we move on. Very boring step. You can paint the boots any dark color you like. You can even paint them light color. It's your guy. With the hair, I'm going to work it up from Ulthuan Gray, so I'm not just doing the pure white as the very first step. So the Ulthuan is going to cover almost all of the hair, and again, just leave a little bit of the sepia showing between the strands, etc. And I'm using a bit of thinner medium because Ulthuan does tend to dry fairly quickly, and you can kind of create some streaking and lumpiness if you don't thin it down a little bit. You can also thin it down with water. You see that a lot on the Warhammer TV tutorials, for example. But yeah, just paint it in, and again, leave some of that sepia showing. By the way, at this point I've switched to the 00 Redgrass Games brush, and as a Winsor & Newton Series 7 fan, I'm actually really liking these brushes so far, so there's a bit of a spoiler on a future review that I think they're actually quite good, and they're holding a point and really nice to work with so far. Now I'm going to highlight the hair with a bright white. I'm using P3 Moro white, and you know, a GW equivalent could be ceramite white. And a little bit of thinning, like as I've done before, trying to cover sort of the upper areas of the hair, the top of the head, the edges of the hairline, etc., and still leaving some of that Ulthuan and some of the sepia showing, but definitely creating a bit of brightness. Because we're doing a fairly pale, fair skin tone, we're not going to start with Bugman's Glow, which has been my go-to on a lot of recent miniatures. We're going to use Cadian Flesh Tone as the initial base coat, which is lighter. It is a layer paint, but I did notice that over white it has really nice coverage. It really only took one coat, you know, going back over a little bit as it was drying just to clean it up a bit. But nice coverage, yeah. So, and thin it a little bit so you avoid getting streakiness on the face. To highlight that, rather than jump to something like Kislev Flesh, I'm just going to be adding white. In this case, I'm using my white primer, which is basically white paint. You can see how much white I'm adding. I'm going back and adding a bit more and a bit more and a bit more until I'm happy that I've created enough of a difference in the highlight shade from the base. And you notice also I haven't washed it with any flesh shade. That's intentional because, again, I'm going for quite a fair skin tone, and I didn't want to just create an all-over wash of the flesh shade, which would darken all the skin and almost take it back to like a Bugman's Glow, which I didn't want. Highlighting here, of course, is cheekbones, nose ridge, eyebrow ridges, and forehead. This is a long section, and I don't have anything else to say about it, so we'll just sort of sit here awkwardly, and maybe you can hear the music a little bit. We're almost done. Eventually we'll do a matte varnish, of course. I don't know if I'll show that step. But I am using the flesh shade very much as kind of like a pin wash or a very area-specific wash to sort of pencil in some shading of the eye area, the eye socket, within the crease of the nose, under the cheekbones, but not doing it as an overall wash, again, because I don't want to darken the whole face. I'm being fairly precise with this. Also do the lip to give it a bit of redness and have it stand out from the white beard and mustache. This is a bit of an optional step, but it does create a little bit more definition in the face and help some of the features stand out. And it's worth noting here, I'm not painting his eyes. My feeling is he's so small scale, and he's going to be, it really is still tabletop quality. I just want him to look awesome during games, and he's not a display model, so the eyes just are not going to show up and not worth, you know, screwing up the face with giant cartoon eyes by accident. And here is the finished Jeor Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I think I got that right. Pretty happy with how he turned out. Again, the type of plastic here does have imperfections and soft detail, but I am still pretty happy with the miniature for tabletop use and in a war game. You'll notice there's some white speckles on this guy. I think that's my fault. I probably got some of the white primer on the black. You will not likely experience that, and you'll have an even better miniature than mine. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm considering doing more Song of Ice and Fire tutorials, even though the Warhammer ones get 7 or 8 times the views. What can you do? Consider sharing and liking the video, and maybe even subscribe if you don't already. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.